Welcome to Sci-Fi Galactic Tales. Please subscribe your channel where epic adventures across the cosmos come to life. Dive into thrilling stories of distant galaxies, mysterious worlds, and unforgettable characters. If you love it, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share with fellow space explorers. Let us know your favorite part in the comments. The story begins with the deep space scanner beeped softly, filling the bridge of the starship Aurora with an eerie rhythm. Captain Elias Carter leaned forward, his sharp eyes locked on the blinking light on the console. It wasn't just background noise or static interference. This was something real, something old. "Lieutenant Fields," Elias called out, his voice calm but firm. "Tell me that's not just another anomaly." Naomi Fields, the ship's communications officer, was already typing furiously, her fingers flying over the console. Her brow furrowed as she adjusted the filters, clearing the interference. Then, her breath hitched. "It's a signal, Captain," she said, barely above a whisper. "And it's coming from the Sol system." Silence filled the bridge. Everyone knew what that meant. Earth, the birthplace of humanity. The planet that had been abandoned for 1,000 years. Elias' jaw tightened. He had read the history, seen the records of how Earth had fallen. The Great Collapse, the mass evacuations. No one was supposed to be there anymore. The static crackled, then cleared, and then they heard it. "If you hear this, please remember us." The voice was faint, distorted by time and distance, but it was undeniably human. It sent a shiver down Naomi's spine. "This isn't possible," she muttered. "No one has transmitted from Earth in 1,000 years. There's nothing left there." Elias turned to his second-in-command, Commander Daniel Vega. Could it be an old recording? Daniel shook his head. "If it was, it would have degraded by now. This signal is active. Someone, or something, is still sending it." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. The crew exchanged nervous glances. Naomi's voice trembled slightly. "Captain, what if there's someone alive down there?" Elias exhaled slowly, staring at the blinking signal. He had spent his entire career mapping the outer edges of the galaxy, searching for remnants of humanity's lost past. And now, the past was calling back. "Lock in the coordinates," he said finally. "We're going to find out what's sending that message." A ripple of tension spread through the crew. Some of them had never even seen Earth, only read about it in old history files. To them, it was just a dead world. Naomi hesitated. "Captain, are you sure?" Elias turned to her, his expression unreadable. "If there's even a chance that something remains, we owe it to them to find out." With a hum of engines, the Aurora adjusted its course. The signal pulsed steadily, like a heartbeat in the dark. As the ship sped toward the ruins of humanity's home, no one could shake the feeling that they were about to uncover something they weren't meant to find. The wind howled through the hollow ruins of what was once a great city. The Aurora's landing ramp extended, steam hissing as the crew took their first steps onto Earth's soil. The ground beneath their boots was cracked and dry, the air filled with the scent of dust and decay. Elias Carter led the way, his gaze sweeping across the landscape. Skyscrapers stood like broken teeth against the gray sky, their windows shattered, their walls covered in vines that had clawed their way through the ruins over centuries. Naomi Fields adjusted her scanner, her eyes locked on the blinking signal on her wrist device. "The message is coming from just beyond those buildings," she said, pointing toward what looked like the remains of an old research facility. "Whatever sent it, it's still active." Elias glanced back at his crew. There was Dr. Julian Reed, their scientist, hunched over his tablet, already running calculations. Then there was Sergeant Owen Vance, their security officer, gripping his rifle tight, his expression unreadable. "We move in together," Elias instructed. "Stay close. We don't know what's waiting for us." As they walked through the streets, Their footsteps echoed against the silence. It felt unnatural. Earth had once been full of sound, cars, voices, music. Now there was only the wind. Naomi kept checking her scanner, her brows furrowed. "It's strange," she murmured. "The signal is old, but it's steady, almost like it was meant to last." Julian stopped, kneeling beside a rusted-out car half buried in debris. "This place should be completely dead," he muttered. "Yet, somehow, something is still working here. The technology that sent this message, it's still running after all this time." Owen exhaled sharply. Or someone's keeping it running. That thought made everyone go quiet. If someone was here, who or what could have survived? Elias shook his head. "Let's keep moving." They reached the entrance of the facility. The doors were warped and rusted, but when Naomi placed her hand on them, they shifted, groaning against time itself as they slid open. Inside, the air was thick with dust, particles dancing in the dim light, filtering through the cracks. The room before them looked like a command center, filled with old computers, broken monitors, and long-dead control panels. But one screen still flickered, its glow faint but undeniable. Naomi stepped forward cautiously. This shouldn't be working. Julian leaned in, brushing away the dust. On the screen, a single line of text blinked repeatedly, as if waiting for someone to read it. "If you are reading this, you are not alone." The words sent a chill down Elias' spine. He looked at his crew. Naomi had gone pale, Julian's hands were shaking, and even Owen's grip on his weapon had tightened. "Someone left this message," Elias said, voice low, "and they expected us to find it." Naomi swallowed hard. "The real question is, who left it, and where are they now?" The silence in the room felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The past had reached out to them, and now they had no choice but to reach back. Elias took a step closer to the glowing screen, his heart pounding. The blinking text felt like a whisper from the past, reaching across time. He turned to Naomi. "Can you find out where this message is coming from?" Naomi nodded, fingers flying over her scanner. "Give me a second," she muttered. Her brow furrowed in concentration as numbers and data scrolled across her screen. It looks like the message was set to repeat. Whoever left it wanted to make sure someone found it, even after centuries. Julian leaned in, wiping dust from the console with his sleeve. "But how is it still running? The power grid on Earth should have failed long ago." Owen scanned the darkened room, his grip tightening on his rifle. Maybe someone's been maintaining it. Elias felt a chill crawl down his spine. The idea that someone or something could still be here after all this time sent an uneasy feeling through him. He exhaled slowly. "Let's not jump to conclusions. Naomi, can you trace the source of the message?" Naomi tapped a few more buttons. A small map appeared on her screen, showing a blinking dot deeper in the facility. "It's coming from the lower levels," she said. "Whatever sent this message, it's still down there." Elias turned to his team. "All right, we go in together. Stay alert." The group moved cautiously down the hall, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. Dust swirled in the air, disturbed by their movement. The deeper they went, the colder it became, as if the walls themselves held onto the last remnants of Earth's forgotten past. They reached a staircase leading downward. A faint, rhythmic hum vibrated through the walls. Owen pointed his rifle toward the darkness below. "I don't like this," he muttered. Elias ignored the unease twisting in his gut and gestured for them to continue. As they descended, the humming grew louder. The air smelled stale metallic. The corridor at the bottom was lined with old doors, most of them rusted shut, but one stood slightly open, a faint blue glow spilling from the gap. Naomi glanced at Elias. He gave a nod. She pushed the door open. Inside, the room was unlike anything they had seen before. In the center stood a cylindrical glass pod, glowing softly. Wires and tubes connected it to an old-looking terminal. The message still flickered on a nearby screen. Naomi stepped forward, scanning the pod. Her breath caught. There's someone inside. Elias felt his stomach drop. He moved closer, pressing his hand against the glass. Through the frost-covered surface, he could just make out a figure, a person frozen in time. Julian's voice was barely a whisper. Whoever they are, they've been waiting for us. The hum of the machine filled the silence, steady, unchanging. Outside, the world was long dead. But here, beneath the ruins of Earth, someone still lived, and they were about to wake them up. Elias wiped the frost from the glass with his gloved hand, revealing the face of the person inside. It was a woman, her features delicate, frozen in time. Her skin was pale, her dark hair fanned out around her, suspended in the icy liquid inside the pod. The hum of the machine was steady, a quiet pulse in the otherwise silent room. Naomi's fingers danced over her scanner, her voice barely above a whisper. Vitals are weak, but they're still alive. This technology, it's centuries ahead of anything we knew before the collapse. Julian adjusted his headset, keeping his eyes locked on the pod. How was that even possible? Earth's been abandoned for 200 years. Who could have built this? Owen took a cautious step back, his rifle still raised. Better question, why did they leave her behind? Elias felt an odd sense of responsibility settle in his chest. Whoever she was, she had survived what no one else had. The last human left on Earth. He turned to Naomi. Can you wake her? Naomi hesitated. I don't know what the side effects will be. If she's been in stasis this long, waking up could be dangerous. Elias let out a slow breath. The room felt heavy, like it was holding a secret no one was meant to uncover. But the message had been clear. This wasn't just some abandoned project. Someone had wanted her to be found. Do it, he said. Naomi took a deep breath and reached for the terminal. Her fingers hovered over the controls before pressing a sequence of keys. The hum of the machine shifted, growing louder. A low hiss filled the room as steam vented from the pod. The frost on the glass melted in rapid streaks, revealing more of the woman inside. Julian stepped back. This is a bad idea. Elias ignored him, watching as the liquid inside the pod began to drain. The woman's body twitched, her fingers curling slightly. Her breathing was shallow, but it was there. A gasp escaped her lips as her eyes shot open. For a moment, no one moved. The only sound was the steady beeping of the machine. Then, suddenly, the woman lurched forward, slamming her palms against the inside of the pod. Her wide, panicked eyes darted around the room. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Elias pressed a hand against the glass. Hey, it's okay. You're safe. Her gaze locked onto his, wild and desperate. Her lips moved again, forming silent words. Naomi tapped furiously on her scanner. Her vocal cords might be weak from stasis. Give her a second. The pod's front panel hissed, then slid open. The woman collapsed forward, and Elias caught her before she hit the ground. She was trembling, her skin ice cold. She gasped, voice barely a whisper. How long? Elias swallowed. A long time. Tears welled in her eyes. Then I failed. Julian frowned. Fail what? She clutched Elias's arm, her fingers digging into his suit. The message, you got the message? Elias nodded. Yeah, we got it. Her eyes darkened. Then it's already too late. Elias held the woman close as she shivered against him, her breaths coming in short, panicked gasps. Naomi was already at work, scanning her vitals, her fingers flying across her device. Julian and Owen stood back, their eyes locked onto the woman like she might suddenly vanish or turn into something else entirely. Her body temperature is dangerously low, Naomi murmured, adjusting a setting on her scanner. She's barely holding on. We need to get her to the ship. The woman clutched Elias's arm tighter, her fingers cold as ice. "No," she gasped. You have to listen." Elias met her gaze, steadying her with a nod. "Okay, we're listening." She swallowed hard, her lips trembling. They were supposed to wake me before it happened. Julian crossed his arms, his brow furrowed. Before what happened? Her breath hitched, and she looked past them, as if seeing something none of them could. The collapse, the final event. I was the failsafe, the last voice of Earth. Naomi leaned in closer, eyes filled with concern. "We thought Earth was abandoned, left to rot after the wars." "What do you mean by failsafe?" The woman squeezed her eyes shut for a moment before forcing the words out. We knew it was coming. The wars, the starvation, the collapse of every system keeping the world together. But there was something worse, something no one knew about. She took a shuddering breath. There was a signal. Owen stiffened, his fingers twitching near his weapon. A signal. She nodded weakly. It started before the wars even began. A pattern deep beneath the earth, in the crust, in the magnetic field, something old. Something waking up. Her grip on Elias tightened. I was meant to be woken before it was too late, before the signal could finish. Elias felt a cold chill crawl down his spine. "You're saying something caused the fall of Earth?" "Something, Barry." Her breathing quickened, fear flashing in her eyes. "We tried to warn people. We tried to stop it. But no one listened. They thought it was just another theory, another scientist crying disaster." She swallowed hard. And then, the world fell apart. Not just because of war. The signal was accelerating something, pulling something up from the deep. Julian let out a sharp breath. "And you? You were put in here as some kind of backup plan?" She nodded. The last message. The last chance to tell whoever came next that Earth didn't just die, something took it. A deep silence fell over the room. Elias exchanged glances with his team. The mission had been about searching for old records, finding remnants of human history. No one expected a warning left behind in flesh and blood. The woman's voice wavered. "If you got the message, then it means it never stopped. It means it's still here." Owen tensed, his grip on his weapon tightening. "Still here? What does that mean?" A low rumble suddenly vibrated through the ground beneath them. Dust shook loose from the ceiling. The woman turned, eyes wide in horror. "It means it knows you're here." The rumbling beneath them grew stronger, a deep, unsettling vibration that seemed to come from the very bones of the planet. Elias felt it travel up through his boots, sending a sharp wave of unease through his chest. The woman clung to his arm, her breathing shallow and rapid. Naomi's scanner flickered wildly, flashing unreadable warnings in red. "We need to move," Owen said, stepping back toward the exit. His voice was tense, controlled, but there was an edge of fear behind it. "Now!" Julian adjusted his grip on his rifle, his knuckles white. "What the hell does she mean? It knows we're here." "What's still here?" The woman's lips trembled. "The thing the signal was waking up," she whispered. "The thing buried deep inside Earth. It wasn't supposed to be disturbed." Elias didn't waste another second. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders and pulled her forward. "We're getting to the ship. Everyone move." The team sprinted down the hallway, their boots pounding against the ancient floor. The walls shook as the rumbling intensified. A low, distant sound, almost like a groan, echoed through the underground structure as if something enormous was shifting beneath them. "Exits just ahead," Naomi called out, pointing toward the dim light at the end of the corridor. They burst out into the open wasteland, the dark, ruined city stretching around them in eerie silence. The sky above was the same sickly gray, but something was different. The air felt heavier, charged with an unseen force. The ship was parked a few hundred meters away, its engines already warming up, the ramp down and waiting. Owen reached for his comm. "Sam, prep for immediate takeoff." We're coming in hot. A burst of static. Then Sam's voice, tense and alert. Guys? Something's happening out here." They ran faster. "What do you mean, something's happening?" Elias demanded. Sam's voice crackled again. "The ground, there's cracks forming everywhere. It's like the planet's breathing." Naomi sucked in a breath. "It's reacting to us." To her. The woman stumbled, but kept going, her legs weak from so many years in stasis. "It wants me back," she murmured, her voice distant. Elias tightened his grip. "Not happening." They reached the ship, panting. The ramp hissed as they climbed aboard. Owen sealed the door behind them, and Sam was already at the controls, flipping switches and pushing the engines into overdrive. "Strap in," Sam shouted. "This is going to be rough." The ship rumbled as it lifted off the ground. Through the windows, they could see it, massive fissures splitting the land open, something dark and pulsing shifting beneath the surface. Julian's face was pale. "That doesn't look like rock." The woman closed her eyes. "It's waking up." A deep, unnatural sound filled the air, vibrating through the ship's hull. It was not the sound of the earth breaking. It was something else, something alive. The ship lurched as the ground beneath them gave way, sending up plumes of dust and debris. Elias gripped the side of his seat as the ship struggled to maintain altitude. The vibrations were stronger now, almost as if something massive was moving beneath the surface, pushing against the planet's crust. The sensors were going wild, flashing unreadable errors. "Sam, get us out of here," Owen yelled, his voice strained as he strapped himself in. "I'm trying." Sam's fingers flew across the controls, the engines roaring as she fought against whatever force was trying to pull them back. "But something is messing with our thrusters. It's like gravity itself is shifting." Elias turned to the woman, her pale face staring blankly at the window. "You need to tell us what's happening. What is this thing?" Her lips trembled. "It's not just one thing. It's the Earth. It's always been alive, just sleeping." The message, the signal, it wasn't from some distant civilization. It was from here, from inside. We were never meant to find it. The ship rocked violently, alarms blaring. Naomi checked her readings, her hands shaking. "The planet's magnetic field is fluctuating. If we don't break free now, we might never leave." Julian gritted his teeth, gripping his seat. "What do you mean, never leave?" Sam cursed under her breath, slamming a switch forward. "We're about to find out." The engines surged, flames bursting from the thrusters as the ship forced itself higher. The ground below them wasn't just cracking anymore. It was shifting, rising as though something enormous was pressing against it, trying to break through. Then the sound came, a deep, resonating hum, low and ancient, vibrating through the ship's hull and into their very bones. It wasn't a sound they heard with their ears. It was something deeper, something that made Elias's stomach drop. The woman gasped, gripping the seat beside her. "It's speaking." Elias turned to her, his heart pounding. "What is it saying?" She looked at him, and for the first time since they'd found her, she looked afraid. "It's telling us to leave." The ship jolted, suddenly thrust upward, as if something had released its hold. Sam wasted no time, slamming the controls forward, pushing the engines beyond their limits. The ship shot into the sky, breaking through the thick, gray clouds, the shaking finally subsiding. As they left the planet's atmosphere, Elias looked down through the viewport. The planet below was changing. The fractures in the ground weren't random. They were patterns, massive symbols being etched into the surface. He couldn't read them, but somehow he understood. A warning. As the silence settled over the crew, Naomi whispered, "We were never meant to come here." Elias exhaled slowly. "No," he agreed, "and we should never come back." The ship sped away, leaving Earth behind, but the last message from the planet still echoed in their minds. The Earth had spoken, and it had told them to run. If you enjoyed the last message from Earth and want to watch more thrilling sci-fi adventures, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Dive into epic battles, explore distant galaxies, and join brave heroes as they fight for survival against impossible odds. Don't miss out on the next chapters. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and become part of the journey. Together, we'll keep the last light burning. Subscribe now and let the adventure continue.